Everyone, welcome to the first regular meeting of the Planning Commission of 2021. Happy New Year and happy Inauguration Day. And could we please have a roll call?
Yeah, Commissioner Fonda Bernardi?
Here.
Commissioner Fresco?
Here.
Commissioner Pastor?
Here.
Commissioner Raskin?
Here.
Commissioner Reese?
Present.
And Chair Landris.
Here. Thank you very much. Could we please have the Planning Director's report?
Good evening, Commission. Waiting for slide come up. There we go. I wanted to start with upcoming Planning Commission items and discussion. So as you'll see tonight and going forward, there's going to be a standing housing element discussion item on all future agendas, for the duration of the housing element update process. February 3rd, there's an ARB appeal at 2425 20th Street, and then also a map at 1311 3rd Street Promenade. February 17th, 1665 Appian Way, there's the development review permit variance and track map, and then a alcohol CUP at 828 Pico Boulevard, and then also discussion on a new emergency IZO to preserve potential housing sites. And let me talk about that in the context of City Council actions. So at the last council meeting, there was a 13 item that was introduced and approved that directed staff to look at some areas of the city, particularly the industrial conservation district, where, in that situation, housing is currently not allowed. But, there are some sites that would potentially be, good housing sites. And so we wanted to, in response to council direction, look at that district in particular to figure out if housing is going to be allowed, what the context should be, and then have a emergency zoning ordinance in the meantime in order to make sure that, kind of prime housing sites don't become some other use that may not be as appropriate given the needs of the city for housing, and also kind of the way the industrial conservation district has developed since the adoption of the LUCE. So it's an opportunity to look at that area again. But this idea will actually be a little bit broader than that and look at other areas of the city too, where we could potentially lose housing sites between now and when the housing element is adopted if we don't do something to kind of stop those projects in the meantime. So that will be going to council the end of February, but we are, as you see on the February 17th agenda, planning to bring it to the Planning Commission to get your input before we go to council. And then on housing element update events, the website update with past events. Again, the website is www.santamonica.gov/housing-element-update. And there really is a lot of information on there. So anybody, certainly on the commission or anybody watching who wants information on the housing element should check that out. January 22nd, technical working group on production. And then January 28th, technical working group on stability. And then in early to mid-February, the final technical working groups will be scheduled. That concludes my report. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Yes, go ahead, Elisa.
Thank you, David. That was super helpful. So is that to say that there's only going to be these working groups in January and then one more set in February?
Jean can confirm, but I believe that's right, because then we'll take that information and then, then form some recommendations based on that input. So, Jean, is that?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, because we were the working groups kind of recommendations would be brought forward, to be as part of the analysis that would be presented for broad community feedback in mid-March. We expect with this group, because we'll have, for example, on the production side, the preliminary results. Production group has largely been focused on like the feasibility analysis, assumptions, and methodology for the SSI. So, we will have preliminary results kind of mid-February to share, including the assumptions. And then for the stability group, it's largely been focused on program assessment. So we've included staff from other departments. So it kind of works with the timing in terms of this analysis phase and the schedule of the project.
Thank you.
And I just have just two quick things, and we'll talk about it more when we get to the housing element update agenda item. But just so folks know, Elisa and I requested that this be a standing agenda item from now through the conclusion of the housing element, so that there is an easy opportunity to keep the communication lines open, hear what's happening. And to that end, if you haven't already been asked by staff, if you're on one of those technical committees, please stick with us till the end, because we want to hear from you about how it's going. Again, being sensitive to brownout restrictions, this item will give us an opportunity to talk with each other in public forum about how those committees are going. Also, for David, I was just curious, earlier this week, a planning department in a rather large neighboring city of ours sent around an invitation to some listening sessions related to equity, particularly racial equity. And I was just wondering, given progress here in Santa Monica, whether anything similar or how those efforts might feed into the general work of the planning work here in Santa Monica, and or the work that the Black Agenda is doing in Santa Monica, whether there's going to be an opportunity for planning to be part of that conversation, either related to the housing element or not.
Yeah, but there are certainly those kind of discussions happening at a staff level. So there's meetings that have been occurring with different staff groups. In terms of how that will inform our work going forward, on the housing element and other issues, I think that's something we need to talk about internally and look into. And so, I didn't see what came from, what I assume the surrounding city. But I'd certainly like to look into that and then, have a conversation internally and then update the commission on how we approach that. But it's a obviously an important issue that we definitely want to include in our planning processes.
I only just had it forwarded to me, so I apologize for springing it on you, but I thought it was worth asking about, just given everything. So, and given that this is a priority in the city, so
yeah, thank you.
Forwarding it to you now. And great. So with that, if there are no other questions, we can move forward. Are there any planning commissioner announcements? Yes, Elise Pastor.
I have one short announcement, which is that the California American Planning Association division is doing a workshop on missing middle in housing, and I'm trying to find where it is now. That might be of interest to some people because it's on January 29th at 11:30. It's being put on by a guy named Tony Perez from a planning firm called Opticos, and he's written code for many, many, many years all over the country. So for those of you who might be interested, if you just Google the California division of the APA and search for the Missing Middle Seminar, you might sign up if it's of interest to you.
Are we still, it used to be that we were signed up as planning commissioners for membership in at least the California section of the APA. I don't know if that went the way of budget cuts, but would there be a way for us to get registered for that? Jing or Melissa?
Yeah, we will look in. You're right. We had the commissioner signed up last year. I honestly don't know because since City Hall was closed, whether invoices got sent in. But it wasn't expensive to actually register all 7 members of the commission in the commissioner. Let's say so you receive updates from APA. We will definitely look into that again. So.
Okay. Yeah. I'd be interested in attending that event. I don't know if anybody else would, but should we just be in touch with you? About
those my understanding, most of those online webinars put on by either APA or California APA, they tend to be free right now. If there is a need for a membership, but again, we will get the commission signed up for the APA commissioner availability. I'm
going to send the information I have to Melissa to distribute to the commission, and then if anyone from the public wants the information, Melissa will have it.
Okie dokie.
I will look for it. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands, so here goes with the usual, please place your tray table in the upright position. Please note tonight's procedures for public comment. We are accepting oral public comment by phone through the pre-registration system noted on the agenda. Registration for oral public comment closed at 3:30 p.m. today. I was advised earlier that we do not have anyone registered to speak. Is that still correct, Melissa?
Yes, that is correct. Nobody's registered on any of our items tonight.
Okay. So there is no one, since there's no one who's registered, there's no one who needs to check their email, and no instructions were emailed. Written comments received up until noon today have been read by the Commission. Comments received after 12 p.m. today will be considered part of the record of the proceedings, but will not be posted online with the Planning Commission's agenda, might not be reviewed by the Planning Commission, and will not be read aloud during public comment during the meeting. And I am again going to ask and point out that the moderator chat function in Blue Jeans is for technical help from administrative staff only. It is not for public comment. The Commission cannot see the chat, and comments will not be forwarded to the Commission or entered into the record. With that, we have no minutes to approve, no STOAs to approve, and let me call up the consent calendar. And by way of starting this item, 8A, 1610 Wilshire Boulevard, 20 ENT 0183 conditional use permit. Let's do a quick ex parte check, and then I'll get into what we could or couldn't do. Any ex parte disclosures on this? Okay, I think we all received one public comment from that was sent to us. I don't believe from Elizabeth Vandenberg. I think that went to everybody. So we have no callers in the queue for public comment. It's on consent. Heidi, do we have Heidi? Is Heidi here? Okay, Heidi, if we pull this if we approve this on consent the way it is, alternatively, if we pull it from consent, could we waive the staff report and go straight to discussion? Or do we need to hear? Yeah.
You are not required to have a staff report if you pull it from consent, if you all agree not to have the staff report.
Okay. So I just want to hear what anybody would like to do. We had that one request from the public, so. I don't see anyone wanting to pull it from consent. Okay. Someone want to move the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved by Commissioner Pastor, seconded by Commissioner Raskin. Can we have a roll call?
Okay, Commissioner Fong.
Yes.
Commissioner Fresco?
Yes.
Commissioner Pastor?
Yes.
Commissioner Raskin?
Yes.
Commissioner Reese?
Yes.
And Chair Landris?
Yes. And that approves the consent calendar. So we do not need to have a second vote on the STOA, is that correct?
We should vote to approve it. I think it's two things, right? We didn't change.
Oh, we just moved the whole calendar, so.
Yeah, exactly. So
we're good. Okay, terrific. Let us keep moving. I mean, there's a concert we want to get. No, I'm just kidding. Let us now move to item 9A, 1527 17th Street, 19 ENT 0235 vesting tentative map, 19 ENT 0236 major modifications. Let's have XA. We can go in order. We can start with Commissioner Fonda Bernardi, NA ex parte.
Yes, I met with the architect and his team on Friday for about 45 minutes.
Okay. Commissioner Fresco.
Yeah, I met with the architect and his team on Monday at 1 p.m.
Commissioner, we don't have Commissioner Raskin. Pastor, sorry.
None to report.
None.
Thank
Okay. Commissioner Raskin.
Nothing to report.
Commissioner Reese.
No ex parte for me on this.
Okay, and I met with the team, just for the record, was Howard Lax, Anton Lenning, Juan Robledo, Laura O'Neill, and Kristen Fritz, January 14th at 2 p.m. So with that, we don't have anyone in the queue. Is there a desire to waive the staff report on this one? I see a nod. Is there a motion?
I move that we waive the staff report.
Second?
Second that.
Great. Let's have a roll call on waiving the staff report.
Commissioner Fonda Bernardi,
Yes.
Commissioner Fresco,
Yes.
Commissioner Pastor,
you. Yes.
Commissioner Raskin,
Yes.
Commissioner Reese,
Yes.
and Chair Landris.
Yes. Sorry, Steve, but we don't worry. Well, I'm sure we'll get to questions for you.
Yeah.
So with that, let us give the applicants 15 minutes. There was a request that was submitted for an additional 5 minutes for the applicant. Given the speed at which we are moving, does the applicant wish to make that request, or is the applicant able to keep it under 15 minutes?
We would like to have the 20 minutes if we need it. We're going to try to do less, but it'd be nice to have 20 minutes.
Is there a motion? We need 2/3 on this one. Sorry, from Commissioner Pastor. Is there a second?
Yes.
Commissioner Fonda, seconded by Commissioner Fonda Bernardi. Can we have a roll call?
Commissioner Fonda Bernardi,
Yes.
Commissioner Fresco,
Yes.
Commissioner Pastor,
Yes.
Commissioner Raskin,
Yes.
Commissioner Reese,
Yes, because I sense he can get it done in 15 minutes.
and Chair Landris.
Yes, but I'd really like it to be done in 10. And with that, Mr. Lax, the floor is yours.
Okay. Well, actually, we're going to have Sue Parsons speak first. Sue is the property owner, and then we'll move on to me for 3 slides, and then Laura O'Neill. So Sue Parsons, the owner.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sue Parsons, and I live at 1527 17th Street, and I am the owner of the property, and I just want to say how much I love this bungalow and how happy I am to bring them together. And I just want to thank Howard and Laura and Bill and the whole team for everything they've been doing. And it's been really quite wonderful and amazing. And I'm just really excited about this project. And it's something different from what I've been doing. And so I just, just want to say thank you. And I'd like to, should I introduce Laura?
Well, actually, I'm going to take the floor first, and then I will bring in Laura.
Thank you.
Okay. Next slide. Okay. First of all, welcome. It's good to see everybody on screen. Haven't seen everybody for a while in person. Thanks for tonight. And we're going to make this as quick as possible so we can enjoy the rest of the night. If you have not driven by the site is between Broadway and Cloverfield on the east side of the property. It's a 150 by 50 site. Go ahead, next. Okay. There originally used to be 3 buildings on the site. There was a garage along the back alley to the right. The property, which has been designated a landmark, which Laura will talk about more, is obviously on 17th Street. And the structure that's in pink will be removed. Next. Okay, and then I would like to introduce Laura O'Neill, and she'll talk about historic preservation.
Great, thanks, Howard. Good evening, everyone. As Howard said, I'm Laura O'Neill with GPA Consulting, one of the historic preservation consultants on the applicant team. I'm just going to give a brief overview of the designation of the landmark, its significance, character-defining features, and then how the project meets the standards. So the residence at 1527 17th Street was designated as a landmark and landmark parcel in August of 2018. The owner, whom you just heard speak, Sue Parsons, did initiate the nomination herself in recognition of the importance and outstanding condition of the property. The Landmarks Commission designated the property under Criterion 1 as one of the few extant residences from the early phase of residential development in the Pico neighborhood, and as an increasingly rare example of early residential development in the area. The period of significance under this criterion is 1923, reflecting the original construction date. The character-defining features of the residence, which will all be preserved as part of the project, include its horizontal massing, 1-story height, low-pitched gabled roof, exposed rafter tails projecting roof beams and purlins, decorative wood barge boards with notched details, clapboard wood siding with corner caps, wood sash double-hung windows with geometric muntins, glazed wood door, which you can't see behind the screen, but it is there, wood door and window frames, and the porch details such as the grouped posts, gabled roof, and the wooden vent. So here are some just additional details of the roof and porch features. So if we go to the next slide. And as I mentioned, all character-defining features will be retained and repaired. If damage does occur during construction, they will be replaced in kind. We don't anticipate much damage, however, due to the outstanding condition of the building and its materials and features. Next slide. So it is important to note there's an addition at the rear of the residence that will be removed as part of the proposed project. You can see the red line indicating where the addition begins. It was added as a screened-in porch circa 1940. As a later addition, it's not a character-defining feature, and it has not gained any significance in its own right. Next slide. And on this side, you can just see the extent of the addition to be removed. Next. So this isn't very clear on this, at least on my small screen, due to the scale, but hopefully it was included in your packets, and it just provides more detail on the preservation treatments proposed as part of the project. It's a color-coded diagram of all the character-defining features, how they'll be retained and rehabilitated, as well as which are non-character-defining features that will be removed for your clarity. I just want to note that the colors are for diagram purposes only. They're not the proposed color palette for the building. So please don't be alarmed. Next slide. And another important note is that there is an additional structure on the property that will be demolished. It was constructed in 1920 prior to the landmark building, though it is set farther back on the lot. However, it was explicitly excluded from the designation in the Landmarks Commission's findings. As you can see from the image, it's been altered over time and is in extremely poor condition. It was actually deemed uninhabitable by the Rent Control Board in 2012. But right before I turn it over back to Howard, I just want to acknowledge that there was a difference in conclusions regarding compliance with the Secretary of the Interior standards, particularly with Standard 9 between the memo GPA provided and HRG, the city's consultant's report. I just wanted to say we greatly respect HRG's opinions. We team with them on projects regularly, in fact, and work very well together. But, you know, the standards are intentionally broad and open to interpretation, especially Standard 9 as it deals with new design. Many issues related to design and aesthetics are inherently subjective, and as such, reasonable minds may disagree. So we believe that the project as designed achieves the paramount goal of the rehabilitations and Standard 9 in particular of striking a good balance between continuity and change. The revisions to the design made after initial consultation with the Landmarks Commission and further comments from staff and HRG have yielded an addition to the property that achieves the project goals and program while respecting and highlighting the landmark building. We concur with staff's analysis in the staff report and the similar conclusion presented in the letter of support from the Santa Monica Conservancy, which I hope you have all received and read, that the project complies with the standards as currently designed. So with that, I'll turn it over to Howard. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Laura. A little bit of background on the project activity to date. Back in August of 2018, the site and the building was designated as a city landmark parcel. June of 2019, I filed an application for a certificate of appropriateness. In November of 19, we did have a community meeting with the surrounding neighbors. And in November of 2019, we did have a preliminary landmark commission review to go over the plans. And since then, we've made some changes in response to their comments. And we are here tonight on the 20th of January. After we finish and we receive, hopefully, support from the Planning Commission tonight, we'll move on back to the Landmarks Commission to apply for a certificate of appropriateness. Next. Aerial view of the property, as mentioned earlier, it's 150 by 50. The landmark building, which will be rehabilitated, is about a little bit over 1,000 square feet. The building directly behind it that will be removed is about 830 square feet. The building to the north has significant side yard setback, about 15 feet 9, which is great, gives us some opportunity for some open space. And then the property directly to the south has about a 16.5 foot side yard setback. Next. This is a chart which kind of gives you a pretty good idea of what's allowed in the R2 district and what is proposed. So in the R2 district, we're allowed up to 4 units on a 7,500 square foot lot. We are providing 3 units. Building height, we're allowed in the R2 district 30 feet. We are proposing 26 feet. Typically on historic preservation projects where I am retaining the project for 943030, requesting major modifications, I usually do a theoretical project to see how big of a building I could put if we did not have a historic resource on the site. And we estimate about 6,080 square feet. Our floor area is about 5,500, so about 500 square feet less. Setbacks in the front is one of our first requests. 20 feet is in the R2 district. We're asking for 15 feet 2 inches. Also in the north side yard, 8 foot is our side yard. We are retaining 8 feet on the ground floor. We're asking for 4 cantilevers on the second floor of 18 inches. Thus, we encroach into the front side yard by 6 feet 6 or 18 inches. And then, of course, the parcel coverage. Per code, 45% of the lot coverage. We are asking for 54%. So we're asking for an additional about 670 square feet. Next slide. This gives you an overview of the 3 requested modifications per section 943.030. Parcel coverage, side yard setback, and front yard setback. Next. Modification number 1. As mentioned, we're asking for an additional 670 square feet on the first floor. However, because of the landmark and we do not have any second floor over the landmark, we're actually under by 233 square feet of parcel coverage. Next. Request preservation modification number 2. Reduction in side yard setback only on the second floor. As mentioned, we have 4 cantilevers, which you see by the very thin hatched area on the north side by 18 inches, thus providing additional program space for unit 2 and unit 3. Next. This is an image of showing those 4 cantilevers on the north side yard of 18 inches. Next. to give you a kind of a lay of the land, you can see Unit 1 is a landmark building, and we have added a glass hyphen, or proposed a glass hyphen, to connect the landmark building to the new addition. That way we can expand Unit 1 to about 1,900 square feet. And it's important to note that we do have a basement, and that basement has about 640 square feet. So above grade, the unit is about 1,200 square feet. The Unit 2, we do have a basement. Whoop, we can go back to that slide. Thanks. Unit 2 is about 2,100 square feet. And Unit 3 is about 2,100 square feet. All three have a basement of about 500 to about 550 square feet. And of course, the landmark has a little larger basement. Next. To show you an idea of what this glass connection or hyphen looks like, we've done this on a number of projects in Santa Monica. For example, 1012 2nd Street. This is 1012 2nd Street, where on the right side is the landmark building, on the left side is the new building. We do cross through the hyphen, which is extremely, as much as we can, very transparent, not to impact the historic resource to the right. And then the bedroom wing is in the new building. Next. Second floor. And one of the comments that was provided by the Landmarks Commission is, can you reduce the cantilever, which actually extended 4 feet over the landmark building, originally by 4 feet. We pulled it back about 7 feet. So now it's more of a bay window and does not extend over the landmark building. And that was a great comment. And we have corrected the drawings accordingly. Next. The Unit 2 and Unit 3 in the back of the new building does have a roof terrace, about 180 square feet each. I pitched it very tight to the center of each unit, and Kristen, our landscape architect, who is also here tonight, if you have any questions, we'll be creating landscaping around the terrace for privacy from the neighbors, and also from us looking back to them as well, too. Next. Request preservation number 3. Currently, the landmark building is about 24 feet back from 17th Street. We're allowed 20 feet. We're asking for 15 feet, which is consistent with the adjacent building to the south of 15 feet. So we lined up the building to the south 15 feet. We also took the landmark building and we centered it on the site. So that way we have equal open space on both sides of the landmark building. Next. I had requested our surveyor to analyze each building along between Broadway and Colorado. There is a mix of 3-story apartment buildings, single-family homes, and light industrial buildings, all of which have a mix of different front yard setbacks. The average setback, if you add up all of them, is around 13 feet 2. And again, we are asking for a proposed 15 feet 2, a little further back than the average of the whole block. Next. This is a montage or a view of the proposed building, and the blow up to the bottom of the page is showing the landmark building, the addition in the back, and the building to the north and to the south. And we feel, it's our opinion, that we do not impact the neighborhood in the context of the neighborhood as well. Next. Response to Landmark Commission comments. Number 1. One of their concerns is, why do you have a retaining wall in the front of the landmark? Because we had an underground parking garage and it extended, actually projected outside or above grade. We worked with mobility and we were able to adjust the height of the ramp and adjustments. So now we were able to put the whole underground parking garage below the front yard. The picture to your left is a rendering showing the natural grade of the front yard. The picture to the right is the actual picture. So we are pretty much consistent with the natural grade of the front yard, no changes, and we were still able to get our parking below. That was, again, an excellent comment from the Landmarks Commission. Commission comment number 2. Can you reduce the perceived building height? B, consider removing the stairwell projection. And C, reduce looming cantilever over the landmark building as mentioned earlier. So we dropped the building by a foot. And then if you notice here, the 2 gray areas that have the B over them, those were enclosed stairwells, so that way you can provide an interior stair access up to the roof terraces. And then, of course, C, which was the 4-foot extension over the landmark. We listened to the Landmarks Commission comments, and we have corrected A, B, and C. This is what's before you tonight. Now you take an exterior stair up to the roof terrace for number 2 and number 3. And also we pulled back the cantilever as well. So now we are behind and we're not looming over the landmark building. And we dropped the building by a foot. Yeah, we feel it's a lot more consistent and in scale with the historic resource. Next. Okay. As mentioned earlier, in the R2 district, our height limit is 30 feet. We are at 26.3 feet. So we are below the height limit to be more consistent with the landmark building. And we also have made a few more changes that we have now created some opaque glass for the purpose of privacy to the neighbor to the north. Next. Okay. November 11th, when we met with the Landmarks Commission, you could see the 12'6" cantilever from the building, which is 4 feet over the landmark building. And then our response is we have now a bay window only, which is extending only 5 feet out and 4 feet back from the landmark building. Next. Okay. We feel now that the building, the addition to the back does not loom over the landmark building. It's set back. And next. And this is a current view of the rendering of the landmark building and the building to the back. One of the things I do want to mention is that we do have photovoltaic panels on the south elevation to capture as much sun as possible. Next. Now, additional response to city and staff and HRG comments. These were minor comments provided by city staff and the city's historical consultant. We've addressed those. We can look at those, but again, they're very, very minor, but they did help to even refine the building even more. That is the end of my presentation. And we do have Kristen Fritz here if you have any landscape questions. And also, if you have any questions regarding the tentative track map, we also have our civil engineer present as well. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions? Start with Commissioner Ponda Bernardi and go from there.
No question.
Thank you. Commissioner Fresco?
I have one question. When I had a meeting on Monday, I had asked if the original front door was intact, and Howard didn't know. And I understood from Laura's presentation that they have since discovered that it is there. And so I'm wondering if it's actually listed as a character-defining feature, and if that's like part of the program to preserve it, and if it's on the record.
The front door is a glazed wood door with some decorative muntins like on the windows. So as far as we know, it's certainly an old door and likely original, or at least compatible with the residents, so it could be considered character defining. I don't know that it's in the Landmarks Commission official findings. I have them. I can pull them up. I'm not sure if they list character defining features in the official findings actually.
No, they're very fussy about that.
Yeah. So. So that I'm not sure, but I did confirm. We do have a photo of it in our report that the wood door is there. It's not in the original packet, but we do have a photo of it. I'm not sure how that would get added to the record, but behind the screen door is a glazed wood door.
We'll just maybe put a little alert to the Landmarks Commission in the project conditions so they know to look for it. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
All right, Commissioner Pastor? Commissioner Raskin?
Yes, thank you. Thanks for the presentation. To start, it looks like the relocation of the landmark building is going to potentially involve the removal of some trees on the property. Can you speak to whether trees are going to have to be taken out to develop the project?
Yes. If we can pull up our landscape architect.
Hello, I'm Kristen Fritz with SQLA Landscape Architects. So I don't believe we have a demolition plan for the front yard. I do know that there are 2 large shrubs in the front yard, which will on either side of the front door, which will have to be removed. I'd have to look at an existing plan, though, to see if there's anything else. I don't believe there is. I think it's just the 2 large shrubs.
Well, it looks like there's a ficus tree in the also on the southwest corner of the property. Is that correct?
Yeah, if we can go back, Anton, to the image, the picture of the front yard. That would probably be in the during Laura's presentation. There we go.
So, I mean, ultimately, do you have any plans to replace these trees or just move them on the property so that we're not killing off mature trees?
There's currently no plan to preserve any of the existing landscape. This was a question that came up during one of the discussions with commissioners over the last few days. I think that none of the trees that are on the site are probably worth preserving, and because of the nature of the construction that's going to be taking place on a good portion of the lot, it would be very difficult to maintain them during construction and replant them in hopes that they would survive and thrive thereafter. We are proposing 2 new olive trees on the property that you'll see on the northwest side of the front yard. If we can go to the landscape plan. And those would be 24-inch box trees.
Okay, and then just to confirm, are there any trees on the rear part of the property closer to the alley?
There is no plan to preserve any other trees on the property.
Okay. All right, well, that's all my questions for now. I do have a question for staff, but I'll hold that for later.
Commissioner Reese?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to ask some questions. Patient, and I'm supportive of your desire to rehab this historic building. Well, I'm looking at sheet A302. I see 2 notes, 4 and 9, that confuse me a little bit. And I just want to review them with you, if you don't mind, Howard.
Okay.
But it's sheet A302, and we talk about building was broken up from 11.6 down to 10 feet. And I understand you cut out portions there, but the numbers don't make sense to me. Those areas are not 10 feet tall. Did you take out 10 feet out of this? The second story is now 10 feet? Because I think how it reads now is the building has to be 10 feet at those areas.
That would be sheet A302, are you saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that would be, Anton, that be slide number 30. And Jim, tell me when we're there.
Yep.
Is that the sheet you're speaking of? That's 302B.
No. It's A302 is what I saw last when I was looking through the plans.
Okay, let me see if we can find that for you.
It's basically, it's a rendering, it's a section through the building that it just shows the reduction, and it.
And you saw that on the 11 by 17 set or the PowerPoint?
I saw it on the plans that were in my package online, so probably the 11 by 17.
Okay, let me see if I can pull that up. So I see 302A, 302B.
Just if you have a side elevation or rendering that talks about where you reduced those little cutouts. The note that I read said that you break up building from 11 feet 6 down to 10 feet. And I just can't believe that in those sections you're actually at 10 feet. And I think what you're referring to is just the second story level.
God, I'm just trying to follow this, Jim. And you say section or an elevation?
All right. Let me see if I can pull up the drawings I got off.
Okay.
And see if I can look at it that way.
And I'm looking through the packet now.
Okay,
Howard, this is Steve here. So I think Commissioner Reese is looking at sheet A302A, and that would be the colored side elevation along the north side. And that's the sheet that has all the response to the comments, and I believe it's probably number 9, which talks about the reduced height of the west elevation from 11.6 to 10.
Okay, so that's the HRG comments. Steve, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, Anton, if you can go past the end of the presentation, go up. We'll find this for you. I can find that sheet. I'll go to slide 37. Maybe this is it. This is A302A. But I don't see any dimensions on that.
Okay, well, go back to that one you were just at, please. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay, there. No, you just here. Any one of these, right?
Right there. Hold tab.
Lower the building height. Look at 4. Lower the building height from 11 feet 6 to 10 feet.
Yeah.
I can't believe that you're lowering that down to 10 feet.
Yeah, we actually are. And what that is one of the comments from HRG was, is there a way that you can break up the perceived or create more articulation on the north and the south elevations? You can hold that slide right there. It's a perfect slide. So what we did, Jim, is at the midsection of each unit, we have stairs. And I felt comfortable actually taking the ceiling height and dropping it down. So we have a 9, I think it's about an 8'6" ceiling. So that way the profile of the building starts to articulate up and down to help to break up the perceived articulation on north and south. So where you see the keynote number 4 on that elevation, we actually did drop it down from 11.6 to 10 feet. I dropped it down 18 inches. It used to be all level all the way across between starting on the right side where you see the gray lap siding. Then it drops down 18 inches. Then it bumps up again 18 inches. Then it's 11.6 all the way to the next floor. Then drops down 18 inches and then back up again. I felt comfortable dropping the ceiling height at those 2 locations in Unit 2 and Unit 3.
All right, I'm very supportive of you doing that. I think it's great, and I like how it breaks up the math. I was just concerned that this was worded improperly, and if you're comfortable with it, because it seems to me what you've done is lowered the second level down to the 10 feet, and not the entire building. But if I must be misunderstanding, if you're comfortable with it, I'm not going to push this any further.
Great, thank you.
Okay, then my next question is on LTG 501, and I think this is a lighting plan. It showed a series of lights that were ground up lights. And I'm wondering if you can get away from doing up lighting.
There we go. Okay. Those are landscape lights along the north and the south, as you can see. So they are actually at the bottom of the trunk of the trees. So we create some ambient uplight. I know you're concerned about glare, the neighbors, I'm assuming, to the south. But we've used these lights before. They're obviously low voltage, like most lights are now. Get a lot of light coming up from those. It's just going to glow the base of the tree. And it provides also some outdoor space, very little close to the ground.
Okay. Not a big fan of the uplighting, but you are telling me it's low level, so.
It's low level.
Okay. Those were my main questions. I think you also had the track map drawings you had. I got a little thrown off with the track map drawings because it had a big stamp of approved on it, which seemed odd to me, but I guess that must be some city approval you went through because that's clearly before us today.
Yeah, what that is, Jim, that is stamped by the city engineer. Before we take it to the planning commission, it has to be approved by the city's public works department.
Okay. Okay, very good. I sorry to bother you with those questions, but those are the ones I had.
Excellent questions. Thank you.
Okay, I just, listening to the questions, I just wanted to ask a follow-up of Kristen. So the first question is, you could leave that, you could eat that up. I see a plan for a new tree. Can you just remind us what kind of tree that's going to be?
It's actually two trees, and they're two 24-inch box fruitless olive trees.
Okay, great. Because my understanding, and I know we're not supposed to talk about division today, that's division in the country, not division in the sidewalk. And my understanding is that ficus trees are the evil of all root. So is there any reason to preserve a ficus tree in this city at this time?
No, there's no reason to preserve.
Okay, all right. I'm really someone who wants to. I'm with Commissioner Raskin on the preservation of trees. I'm just ficus trees have, yeah. Okay.
They have weed-like qualities, and they do have surface rooting, can be damaging to structures as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, with that, I think we're ready to. We don't have public comment, so we're ready to go to discussion. But I recall that Commissioner, I want to say, Raskin had a question for staff, right? Okay.
That's correct, and I'll put my dissent for the record of your characterization of ficus trees, but we'll save that discussion. Just a quick question. There's a condition in the STOA. This is condition. Let me make sure I get it right. 22. It says no furniture should be permitted on the rooftop decks above the second floor. And this condition shall also be reflected in the CC&Rs. Is this a standard condition, or is this particular to this property?
This would be a standard condition for our multifamily or multi-unit properties or projects.
Okay, and how is that enforced? I mean, are there ever code complaints about people leaving furniture on decks?
This would be enforced, like in terms of the long term, because this is included in the CCNRs. It would be within the homeowners association for the condo building.
Alice, the risk I think is that furniture leads to fire pits.
Got it. Okay.
I'm joking.
All right.
But
yeah, I'll remark further on that in discussion.
Yeah. Are we ready for discussion? So I recall that Commissioner Fresco wanted to add a note to the somewhere in the STOA directing the Landmarks Commission to pay attention to the front door. Do you have wording for us?
I do. I actually have 3 little, I like to send messages to the Landmarks Commission.
Yes.
So if you want, I can just give you my comments if you're ready for that.
Yeah, let's do that. I'm hoping that we can do that and kind of get to action.
Okay. Yeah. Basically, I think this project is really good. I do feel some of what HRG said about the compatibility, and I wanted to basically what I believe when you put a really contemporary, different style of building behind a landmark structure, the way you create compatibility is to create a relationship in proportions. So I think, sometimes it's a window proportion, sometimes it has to do with horizontality. And I feel like this modern building doesn't quite get there. It's close. It doesn't overwhelm the landmark, which is really great. But I felt that I wanted to add a condition that the Landmarks Commission would pay special attention or particular attention, however we're instructed to say it, to the proportions of the large windows and the bay that faces front above the landmark building to ensure that shapes, proportions, use of muntins, and so forth can better reflect proportions in the historic structure to enhance the compatibility between the 2 buildings. My other note that I came in with before I found out about the door had to do with the color of the building. I felt like the color palette for the contemporary building with a blue-gray and a white, it's very kind of bright and uplifting. And then as it was described, the gray-brown of the landmark building kind of brings it down, the color of dirt. And I would prefer to see a palette that highlights the landmark building and celebrates it more rather than making it the color of dirt. So those were really my 2 notes. But I had a more polite way of saying that. I'm more direct in my comments. But I suggested that they pay particular attention to the color palettes of the new and historic structures to ensure that the new construction appears subordinate to the historic structure. So those are the 2 notes I came in with about the compatibility and the colors creating the subordinate feeling. And then I would like to add that the existing likely original front door is preserved as part of the project. Those are my 3 notes. And with
assuming nobody objects to that, Commissioner Fresco, could you make sure to send that language over to Jing somehow, either through the moderator chat or in some other form? I think we're going to try to get to approving a STOA if we approve it tonight. So I want to make sure they have that language.
Jing, can you read my handwriting?
Yeah, if there's any way to send that over email, I mean, just as an aside, if we can send that stuff to staff before a meeting, that would be extremely helpful given our new STOA policy. But if there's any way to send that over to us to email, that would be really, really helpful.
I'll take a screenshot of
thank you.
My phone right now and send it to you.
Okay. All right. Okay. And do I see any other hands? Commissioner Raskin.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit troubled by this condition about furniture. If property owners want to voluntarily put that in CC&Rs and report it, that's all well and good. But I'm a little bit troubled by the fact that the city is micromanaging furniture in people's homes. If it's a standard condition that we use all the time, then far be it for me to break from tradition. But I'd be curious to hear what everyone else's thoughts are on that. And I have some thoughts on trees as well, but I'll Chair Landers, I'll defer to you as to whether I should talk about that now or
no. Talk about it. If you have, that's what we're here for. So
yeah, well, there's been a group of hardworking people on the Urban Forest Task Force that have been working for years to get a more expansive tree ordinance passed in the city to mitigate the loss of our urban forest canopy, which is primarily being lost through projects like this that involve the redevelopment of buildings, the R1, R2, and R3 zones. And, to some extent, that's just the cost of doing business. You have to break an egg to make an omelet. But the urban forest canopy is a really precious public resource that is being lost at an ever-expansive rate. And, trees like ficus trees are really the workhorse of our city. I know that a lot of people like to hate them, but they really do bring a lot of great public benefits and value to our city, both through the mitigation of the heat island effect and other reasons. I don't think it's appropriate at this point to insert conditions to mitigate the loss of these trees now, as much as I wish that we could. But this is just a really great example of why we move forward with all possible haste to get the revised tree ordinance passed as soon as possible.
Commissioner Fondo Bernardi. You are muted, Mario.
I'd like to follow up Commissioner Raskin's question regarding the furniture. It seems like a non-starter, a condition that says you can't put a chair on your roof deck. You can't put a table on your roof deck. Am I misunderstanding this? You can only stand around with your drink and watch the sunset? Where did this come from? How did it get inserted? I'm glad he caught it because it's nuts. Maybe staff has some opinions on this. Is there a history here of abuse? Where's this coming from?
Yeah, we've actually been trying to find that, and I'm not totally sure. I think that Steve is right. That it has been a standard part of all of our tentative map conditions. I will say that if the commission has discomfort with it, we would have no objection to having it removed from condition 22. We're just not quite sure where it came from. I can only speculate. Some projects in the past maybe and concerns about noise or something, but it's really hard to understand.
I'd like to have it stricken in our final determination.
Agreed. Okay. Other comments? Okay, I would just like to add that I appreciate I just want to point out, and to anybody who's listening, the project team, I think, has done a very thoughtful job here. When we met, we talked a little bit about the relationship of the massing to the neighbor to the north. And so I want to point out that we received a letter from the owner of the property to the north expressing support for the project. Also want to commend the design team for rethinking the window type on the windows that are on the windows of the landings that are overlooking the property to the north, so that glass will now be opaque. Because this had come up a few hearings ago where we were looking at massing that was quite close to neighboring properties. So I think this has been handled very sensitively. The windows on the second floor are quite high. They're bathroom windows. Nobody has an interest in having anybody else look in. They won't be able to look down. And in any event, we've now heard from the neighbor to the north. So With that, what I hear
Can I
is.
make one comment?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Can I make one very
Sure.
short comment?
Yeah.
I think you guys have done a great job, and I think it's great to see that you're taking a lot. I know it's an R2 lot, but it's like from a single family home. I think this is a great example of what we can do on these types of lots as we think about our housing element and we think about our RENA. So.
Amen. And to Commissioner Raskin's point, we do need to preserve trees. I have thoughts about ficus roots and the damage that they can do. It's a non-native tree, but my knowledge. But
you're not going to get carried away.
But I'm not going to get carried away, and I just want to echo his call because we do need adequate shade in our community. With that, I'm going to start in order here. And I do have the changes that we have in mind, but the first thing we need to do is move the vesting tentative parcel map number 82666. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Great. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so moved by Fonda Bernardi, seconded by Reese. Let's have a roll call.
All right. Commissioner Fonda Bernardi?
Yes.
Commissioner Fresco?
Yes.
Commissioner Pastor?
Yes.
Commissioner Raskin?
Yes.
Commissioner Reese?
Yes.
And Chair Landris?
Yes. Let me ask Heidi, can we combine the votes 2, 3, and 4 for the mod, the 2 mods or the 3 mods? Can we do those together?
Yes. Yes.
Great.
You may.
Could I have a motion related to major modification 19 ENT 0236 for additional ground floor parcel coverage for front yard setback and associated projections, and for the side yard setback an additional 2-foot average?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Reese. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Raskin. Did you want to speak to the motion? Did you have a concern about that? Are you good? Yes, Commissioner Raskin. Sorry, Commissioner Raskin, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I thought you were throwing the STOA in there too. I wanted to speak to that, but no.
Yeah, no, you're doing the STOA. These are just the technical approvals of the mods. We'll do the STOA last.
Okay, never mind then.
Okay, I have 5 votes on my cheat sheet. I'm trying to get it down to 3. So, with a motion and a second, let's go to a roll call.
Okay. I mean, we're not
actually, if we're making changes, if you are conditioning the approval of the major mods, then they do need to be incorporated into this motion, and then the STOA will come after that, after you've made all of the changes to the major mods.
So then, is it friendly to the maker and the seconder to incorporate Commissioner Fresco's 3 notes that particular attention be paid to the proportion of the large windows and the bay window, that particular attention be paid to the color palette in order to highlight the landmarked building, and that to the extent possible, the original front character-defining front door be preserved?
Yes.
Yes, that's friendly.
Great. And is it friendly to the maker and the seconder that we strip any reference to furniture on the roof decks?
Any reference to the prohibition, yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes, I'm seeing Commissioner Raskin nod. So, okay. Any other?
Just real quick, with the understanding that maybe we'll keep the language that says that they can put that in the CCRs if they want to, but it shouldn't be a condition of approval.
Well, then we should leave it out. We shouldn't reference it.
Yeah,
we shouldn't mention it because we're not telling them they can't. We're just,
Good point, yeah.
Right. Any other? Okay, so now are we ready for a roll call? Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Fonda Bernardi?
Yes.
Commissioner Fresco?
Yes.
Commissioner Pastor?
Yes.
Commissioner Raskin?
Yes.
Commissioner Reese?
Yes.
And Chair Landris?
Yes. And now let's go to the STOA. Before we have a motion, could I ask staff to read back the changes that you have received, hopefully in a variety of email formats.
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen, and I'm hoping that as you all look at it, this is accurately capturing what meant here.
Did you get my picture?
I did get it. So this is what we. So there's going to be a new condition number 3. So you can see here the Landmarks Commission shall pay particular attention to proportions of the large windows and bays in the new construction to ensure their shapes and muntin patterns reflect shapes and proportions of the historic structure, such as the front porch, in order to improve design compatibility. Color palettes of the new and historic structure to ensure that the new construction appears subordinate to the historic structure, and the existing likely original front door is preserved as part of the project. And then amended condition number 22, you can see the strikeout of the no furniture shall be permitted on the rooftop decks above the second floor. This condition should also be reflected in the CCNR. So those 2 sentences have been struck in their entirety.
So I'm just noticing that the third bullet on the Landmarks Commission doesn't read as a sentence. So it probably should read, the Landmarks Commission shall pay particular attention to the existing likely front door in order to preserve it as part of the project.
Sorry, I wrote that one on the fly during the meeting.
Does that work?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Right.
Okay.
Okay. Great.
Thank you.
Okay. Yep. Terrific. Is there a motion?
Move that we approve it.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Fonda Bernardi, seconded by Fresco. Let's have a roll call.
Commissioner Fonda Bernardi?
Yes, I would like to add one important comment that I really appreciate the lowering of the building, both in terms of articulation, but going from 30 to 26 feet. That's a really nice relationship to the neighbors, particularly that pool to the north that needs sunlight. And we rarely see that. We rarely see people giving up height. So it's very appreciated.
Commissioner Fresco?
Yes, and not to drag it out, but I just have to say that Howard Lax has become the master of this kind of project.
Commissioner Pastor?
Yes.
Commissioner Raskin?
Yes.
Commissioner Reese?
Yes.
And Chair Landris?
Yes. So thanks to everyone on this, and good luck moving forward. We shall now move on to item 10A, update, discussion, and possible action on the housing. Update, discussion, and possible action on the housing element update process, including but not limited to reports from technical working groups, upcoming milestones, and public input opportunities, updates on project schedule, and potential issues for further study. This is basically a catch-all. What I have asked for is for today is is to hear from staff about the comments made by the Rent Control Board, which went with our comments to council, as well as comments made by the Housing Commission, which I believe finally did get a chance to meet this month. And then to the extent that there are commissioners who have participated in the technical working groups, I think it could be helpful for us to hear a little bit about what's been happening in each of the working groups. Again, no formal reporting. There's no staff report here. The purpose of this is really just sort of keep us all informed and have a check-in. So let me turn it over to Jing, and then we can hear from the technical working group liaisons.
Great, thank you, Chair. I'm just going to share my screen quickly. I just had some brief slides. It'll just be easier for everybody to kind of follow along where we are. So just to kind of building on David's director's report, at this point, we've wrapped the initial phase of public outreach. And so we're working on revising the goals based on all the feedback we've received on the goal language. We've received a lot of input on new ideas to explore, and survey results have been posted on the website. And there were, I think, just to summarize, we heard probably one of the top concerns was the cost of housing in Santa Monica. That's not surprising. In terms of question 11, that was a much more open-ended question, and we kind of put together, we're putting together a summary narrative of the 346 respondents that provided an answer to that question. We had 450 survey respondents overall. And I think just to give you a flavor of the themes that we're seeing, there was a lot of interest around the idea of home ownership, but also in terms of housing affordability. So kind of, talking about that. In terms of the RHNA, we were seeing a sort of broad theme around making sure that the RHNA was accommodated without discrimination to existing zoning or neighborhoods. So that was a big theme we were seeing there. On housing types, we were seeing a lot of comments there around offering housing for those that work in the city but cannot afford to live here. So that's just some of the early things that we were seeing. We're still working through a lot of question 11. On the working groups, production and stability, we're seeing, you can see the topics that those groups have been focusing on feedback on goals and data points across both groups, and then it splits off with production, really focusing a lot on the suitable sites methodology and the feasibility analysis, the base assumptions. And on the stability side, there's a lot of great discussion around program assessment and ideas, a lot of really interesting ideas to advance housing preservation, particularly. Just want to give you a quick update in terms of the RHNA appeals since they're ongoing throughout January. Just sharing with everyone that SCAG staff has recommended denial for all but one appeal. Staff has been tracking that, and we've seen pretty much, all appeals have been denied thus far. And staff is continuing to explore legislative advocacy at council's direction. So we visited the Rent Control Board also in December, and you can see here that the Rent Control Board's comments were largely related around retaining existing rent control, long-term housing stock. There was an overarching concern about a potential wave of Ellis Act evictions due to the effects of COVID-19. So this focus on ensuring that tenants continue to be able to live in Santa Monica and tenant protections. The Rent Control Board was strongly opposed to any incentives for medium-term housing of any sort due to their potential impacts on increasing rents and emphasis on family-size units and affordable ADUs to support a diverse population. So that's a summary of what we heard from the Rent Control Board. From the City Council, again, at December study session, there was general comments to proceed with the preparation of the housing element update as required by law, but to also pursue a parallel track on considering additional study and possible legal options to challenge the regional allocations, look at advocacy for funding for affordable housing, and also other kinds of advocacy to provide flexibility for the city to meet its RHNA. And then at the Housing Commission, which we went to this month, the comments around site selection, generally around maximizing any city-owned or publicly owned land. The Commission gave comments on targeting Santa Monica workers, rent-burdened tenants, and the homeless population. Units included those that can accommodate families. There was comments around, would be interesting to see smaller units that are closer to transit with reduced parking, support for ADUs. And there were several comments around this emerging theme we're seeing around ownership, that it's not necessarily doesn't necessarily equate to improving permanent residency, more so than rental, and that if we are going to pursue ownership as a goal, that it needs to address pricing. There was also, the Housing Commission also focused a lot on ensuring that affirmatively furthering fair housing requirement is fully addressed, and I think they were talking more about it in not just geographic distribution, but in terms of correcting historical actions that have led to disproportionate impacts on different communities. And you can see here a list of the new ideas to explore in terms of ranging from affordable housing funding and innovations that can reduce the cost of housing, to conducting outreach to moderate income housing developers, and understanding the tipping points in construction costs due to the change in type. So those were things that we would pursue as part of the feasibility analysis, and also making sure that an off-site affordable housing scenario is looked at. So that provides, I think, a summary of the Housing Commission's Rent Control Board and City Council study sessions that have been held thus far, in addition to an overview of the survey results that we received.
Great. Thank you, Jing. Why don't we hear from the folks who are on the production committee, if they want to make any comments. I believe that's Commissioners Fonda Bernardi or Pastor.
Sure. Well, one of the things we struggled with, particularly in our first meeting, is it's the chicken and egg thing. We were trying to establish where we've been and then where we could get to in whatever build-out scenario you had in mind. And we've had a very hard time getting our handle on what actually has been approved. And did it involve the suitable sites from the last cycle? And how good was our guesswork? We've never been able to get that data. And then going forward, we've never been able to get to the breakout of which of the 4,000 units that are, quote, in the pipeline are likely to conclude before the end of the 5th cycle and therefore would move into the 6th cycle. We haven't been able to get that data. So we've had a hard time getting our mind on the data. And again, the data is important because it argues for what is a reasonable housing element. Because I think where we're headed for is a drive. We're going to be pushed by constraints that the state keeps piling on to go to an upzoning, which I don't feel like is necessary and actually is detrimental. And so keeping that lens open, I think, would be very desirable to look at all sites as developable sites if they meet certain criteria. We can define those criteria later, but there are more developable sites than not. And the fact that the city only came up with 67 in the last cycle tells me that something was distorting the map at that time. So it's very important to understand how well they did and then guesstimate.
Commissioner Pastor?
So my focus was on the second production meeting, which is where we really talked about the assumptions. And we got some really good information from, I think, the people who are in the field who are doing this every day as to what the assumption should be, because those are going to be sort of the key, that's going to be the key analysis about feasibility, which is going to feed into the suitable sites analysis. And so I know my group had a lot of professionals, and they shared a lot of information, which was very interesting. And at our request, staff is going to come back and show us the assumptions to make sure that we're all on the same page with that, and that we don't have a repeat of what happened in the past with an HRNA study. Also, what was my second thing I was going to say? I just lost my train of thought. So, but they've been going well, and they've been very useful, and there's been a lot of participation.
Okay. Commissioner Raskin.
Yeah, so Chair Landers and I have participated in the housing stability working groups. We've had 2 meetings so far. The first one focused primarily on the scope of the process and focusing on what our objectives should be. And then the second meeting really started to look at what programs exist for facilitating housing stability and housing preservation, and how those programs are working and what we can be doing better. And I understand that we'll be continuing that conversation at our next meeting on 28th. And Chair Landers, I don't know if you want to say more or if I should elaborate.
Yeah, I mean, I think we spent a lot of time talking about program, right? So essentially what we were doing was looking at the past decades worth of investment by the city, and primarily by the city, but also other programs keep people in their homes, and look at the resources that might be available to continue to do so. I think that we all had a sense listening to the, in the conversation that our resources pale in the face of the economic pressures that are out there, right? And we heard from, the Rent Control Board that there's a real concern about a wave of COVID-19 Ellis evictions and also concern about sort of pressure on rent-controlled properties. Even the one that we just approved in the way back when used to be used to have a rent-controlled unit on it. So though it was uninhabitable. So I think we're bumping up against a set of constraints that we find very challenging given the limited resources to deal with, and I think that's going to continue to be a theme of our discussions about how we preserve existing housing in the face of change. I would just add one other comment that I wanted to throw into the mix, which is that I do hope that we will be, that staff and others will be working to look at the future of construction over the next decade. There are, the comment about modular construction I think is very important. There are new methods of construction, cross-laminate, mass timber. There are other that are sustainable. There are a variety of technologies that are coming into play that will be far more common over the next decade. And so if we can be thinking about that as we look for strategies to reduce the cost of construction and the cost of producing housing, I think that could be very valuable. Are there any other, sort of questions or thoughts? This is really meant to be a time to kind of throw things into the mix ahead of other committee meetings. Jim or Nina, is there anything you want us to take back to either of the committees or things you want staff to be thinking about? I know you sent us a note about tiny homes, Nina. So
I did. When that email came in from that member of the public about tiny homes, I just happened to be in the phase of my own research. I was encountering all of the trailer homes of Santa Monica and what happened post World War II. At that time, we actually had twice as many homeless people in LA County as we have now, although we might get there still. And it was a really big deal and a huge crisis. And in Santa Monica, they upzoned what I call up the middle, the area between Pico and Santa Monica Boulevard, and all the R1 areas were preserved. There were also some R2s north of that. And so the two things that are coming to my mind at the time in the 1940s and 50s when they were dealing with this crisis before, one of the things they encountered was that building codes, and you know what they were like then compared to what they were like now, but they were a huge impediment to getting housing up quickly. And it was a big deal. And one of the things they did at that time was to put up temporary housing in places where they could, and to just allow things to happen that weren't really what we ultimately wanted in order to get people off the streets and to get people into homes. So that meant in Santa Monica, we had trailer parks that in different times housed over 1,000 families. And we had barracks built where Rand is now across from City Hall, which was just empty land at that time, where they could put people. There were special barracks and trailer parks and things set aside for, for Japanese Americans who were coming back from internment and had no place to live and had lost their homes. So I feel like this idea of if somebody can get a house, maybe we could make it easier for them to find a place to put it. Maybe there's a way to pool empty land on a temporary basis to get us through a crisis, or there's some sort of communal kind of way of sharing land so that more people can get houses in sort of a courtyard apartment kind of a modality, so that people can, we can circumvent some of the barriers. And then the other thing I was thinking about this is when I saw how we had this huge housing crisis and we crammed all the multi-unit buildings into the middle of our city, and the vast majority of our city on the north and south ends are R1 and people with a lot of land. It made me wonder why legally we can charge a affordable housing surcharge to people who build multi-unit buildings, but we don't do the same for people who live on whole parcels with single units on them. So, and I also thought maybe when we can encourage people to build ADUs, but we also need encouragement to get people to use them for other families and not just use them for home offices. So that maybe there's a way to get money that we can use for housing through, if you can't document that somebody is using your ADU as their primary residence or so, I don't know. I've just been thinking about all of the resources that we have, and I've been really digging into how our housing inequity began and how it got really bad and ways we've gotten through it in the past. So those are things
Can I respond to something? Commissioner Fresco, you may be interested to know that there is a company called Palette, I believe is what they're called, and they basically do temporary pop-up homes. And right now there's a movement or a project that's trying to happen by Carrie Morrison in Hollywood. And they are really trying to make basically these like pop-up homes happen after all of the news came out about how much it costs for the city to do it, and that a lot of what they're encountering is these issues with like building codes and safety codes. And so they're trying to work through that at the moment. And I sort of talked to her briefly, I wonder if we would want this in Santa Monica. And so there is a lot of similarity to what you're describing.
Well,
and if you're interested, you may check out this company called Palette.
Okay. Also, there's in Portland, a couple of years ago, my son did a project where he was building those little tiny pop-up homes for formerly homeless people. And I mean, they have more open space there, and they were able to designate an area where a village of these homes were established through nonprofits that built the homes and then provided them to the people who needed them. And, we don't have that kind of open space, but maybe there's land that parking lots, places that aren't that useful now that could be even as a temporary measure. I feel like we have to stop letting the perfect be the enemy of the good, too.
Right. And with, I think it's hard because on one hand people say, well, who wants to live in these tiny places? And they have shared bathrooms and they have all of this stuff. But at some point, I agree with you that we have to stop perfect being the enemy of the good and get people in some housing temporarily.
The village we see over on 3rd Street between Santa Monica and Venice, that's not as good as what I would want to live in. We can do a lot better than that, is what I'm trying to say. So.
And Sean, I don't have a lot to add. Obviously, the cost of housing is critical to this, so I'm interested to see how that plays out. I did see an article just recently about a project and claiming they were able to do units at $200,000 a unit, which is surprisingly cheap. And trying to see what they used there, but I think that was modular with trailers or something to that effect. But it was a very quick process to get it going. So we do have to be as creative as possible.
Yeah. Thanks. I think this is the important conversation because the 2020s are going to look different in terms of what is buildable and what is affordable and all of that. So. To the extent that we can be paying attention to the code issues that will arise around them. I would just add that all of what you're saying applies to ADUs as well. And so to the extent that we have building and safety rules that may be, that maybe have been written presuming, handcrafted artisanal construction, in an era when these things can be now ordered and kind of dropped down onto a property or assembled in 4 or 5 easy steps. Maybe part of what we want to do is really try to streamline that process as well to make sure that it's as easy as possible for people in Santa Monica to acquire and deploy those ADUs along the same lines. So let's and to do so, frankly, with an eye towards sustainability. A lot of those ADUs are coming in with solar panels pre-installed. They're coming in with different ways of handling water and water circulation and sewage. So we should be as creative as possible within a public health and safety and building safety framework. And I hope we'll have a chance to try to make some recommendations around those lines as well. So other thoughts? Why don't we keep going? Seeing none, let's head to the last item, which we have. Yeah, Commissioner Raskin.
Just a quick question. So after the working groups wrap up next month, are there any other big deadlines after that? And related question, do you all have a projected date for when the draft EIR will be released?
Yeah, all good questions. So I think as we introduced to the Commission a couple months ago, this is a very, very fast process. So we are in the research analysis phase, and we are rolling towards kind of a mid-March rollout of draft concepts with the Planning Commission, the community, the City Council. So that's not too far from now. So that's our first kind of internal city deadline, if you will. All that is to allow the staff a couple of months to actually write the document, and then we will emerge again kind of around June, again to share that draft housing element document with everybody, have study sessions. I think really looking for direction at that point, because then we would be submitting the draft to HCD about July 1 for their 60-day review period, come back again, revisions, hearings again, and then, back to them in October. So in terms of the draft EIR, I think we're looking at March. No, it was I think it was a June release for the draft EIR. So yeah, it's the world's fastest EIR too. So it'll all be coming at you. If I can just respond to some of the comments that I received, because I think maybe we can just give the Commission a little bit of progress on that. So in terms of Commissioner Fonda-Marby's question on the pipeline, we actually do have that information. We're just working on cleaning up. Part of the distinction is that when projects are approved after planning, they're kind of in that in-between period where it's really all in the applicant's hands. So we're trying to make sure that we split up those, like trying to determine probability, right, of those that are like, if you're in plan check, you're probably going to get a building permit before July, we think. And if you haven't, then more than likely you're after July. So we're trying to just parse that out right now to figure out like how many of our pipeline, are already accounted for in the RENA, for example. Obviously, those that are already under construction, they're already spoken for in the fifth cycle, or if they're already, got their permits, then we can't double count those. For the ADUs, I think I've shared this with the Commission before, but we are submitting a request for a grant. SCAG put out a grant. It's the Sustainable Communities grants. And one of the major tracks they have there is what we're calling kind of the ADU Accelerator. And the idea there is to pursue kind of like pre-approved plans for ADUs. We're by no means the first city to be doing that, but we think that that's something, because we see very typical projects like a garage conversion or brand new on a typical lot. So we want to pursue that project, and hopefully we get the grant funding to do that. And then on the HRNA studies, actually in the production working groups, I've heard a lot about innovation. That's actually what they'll be talking about on Friday, is about construction innovations, barriers to housing production. We have 2 architects and a cost estimator on the team in addition to HRNA, who are advising, providing that piece. And obviously the working group is chock full of, many development professionals, who have a lot of knowledge and expertise to provide on that. So, we feel like we're getting some really well-rounded opinions. in that regard. So I just wanted to just provide some of that context comments.
Great, thank you. And if I could just ask practically, I see Jen, but really quickly, it sounds like there might be a need potentially for some additional planning commission meetings in March and or late May, June if we need to meet more than twice a month. So to the extent that there might be some additional dates, it could be helpful to get those out to us sooner rather than later. We can then at least so that you know that we have a quorum on those dates.
Yep, certainly.
If you think that's a possibility, we are here. Jim, Commissioner Reese. Can't hear you.
Ding, did you guys dig into the one challenge that was successful with the arena numbers and why it was successful?
It was actually unincorporated Riverside County was the one that was recommended for approval of theirs, and it was an adjustment of like 200 units or something, which is minuscule in the face of the 1.3 million for the whole region. And I didn't quite get into all the details, but I suspect it may have been a technicality of some kind. Largely, when you look at all of the appeals that were filed, based on the substance of the law and HCD's global response to it, I'm not really surprised to see that nearly all of them were recommended for denial and were denied by them. But I can certainly.
And do you have a sense of when that's going to be finalized? Of when those are going to be done?
They have been holding hearings through this whole month, and I believe it's the beginning of February. When we'll have the allocations all finalized.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks. This is really good, and hopefully we'll be able to keep this up. It's good to keep the communication lines open. So let's now move on to public comment. I do want to take note of the public comment we received about tiny homes, which Commissioner Fresco addressed, and presumably the commission would, look into moving forward. And we received a request from the applicant at Carlthorpe asking for the commission to send a representative to the city council. We cannot act on that tonight. We could schedule a formal agenda item to appoint someone, or the bylaws would simply allow the chair to either speak or designate another speaker. So if you'd like to schedule a formal discussion of this, we can. Otherwise, I'm happy to work with staff to figure out when the appeal is likely to be and who's likely to be around.
Go for it, Sean.
Okay, then we'll keep it light. I'm not saying I'm going to be the rep. I'm just saying I'm going to check the schedule and get back to y'all. With that, I don't think we have any other public comment to which to respond, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, Commissioner Raskin.
Yeah, I just want to say for the record, I really appreciated Commissioner Fresco's research on the history of our city. It was really wonderful. So thank you.
You're welcome.
It's always wonderful. Half of the things that come before us are enriched by Nina's research, and it's really a pleasure. So, and speaking of, we wish Commissioner Pastor a belated happy birthday. I think it was this week.
Happy birthday.
Yes. With that, there may still be a little bit of concert going on, so why don't we adjourn? We'll see you all in a couple of weeks.
A good day, folks. Have a good rest of your day.
Happy inauguration.
Good night.